Hello everyone, it's Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore here. I'd like to welcome you to the MuseScore Café. So this is Wednesday, July 6th, and I would like to encourage everyone to kind of check in the chat. Let me know if things are working okay. Let us know how you're doing today, where you're coming from, and hopefully things work as expected here, because you never know. You just never know. So this is the first the first week of the month. So it's the Ask Me Anything session. So that means y'all get to ask me questions, and I do my best to answer. And as always, if I'm going to need to see your score in order to be able to answer your question, definitely go ahead and post that. And in fact, let me just grab a quick link for y'all to where the place to do that would be. What I'll recommend is the conversation space in the community here. And I know you're in the community because otherwise you wouldn't be able to be here. And that's one nice simplification that I'm dealing with now. Okay, so I see people checking in, which is great. Let me get that link here. So I want to get to the conversation space. Ooh, is there a new... oh, no, this is one I already saw. No, you don't want to see the list of members. We want to see the conversation. So here is the conversation space. And I'm going to go ahead and just post this link so that if you need to share a score, this is a place to do it. All right. So, as would be typical here, I don't have a specific agenda. You know, it's about you asking me questions. So I'm ready. Of course, I'll stall for time and say what I need to say while I wait for questions. But let me see. Let me talk about a couple things that I am doing here that I always kind of do as part of my setup, and they're always useful things to know. One thing is, you may notice I've got the play panel down here in the corner. This play panel you can disassociate, right? You can have it be floating like this, or you can dock it. If you dock it like this, then it's kind of tabs like that. And I guess that's kind of useful, actually. Maybe I should just do that. But I've gotten in the habit of not doing that. I've gotten in the habit of dragging it away, so it's a little tricky sometimes to... I guess I got to do it from the title bar. There we go. And then I size it to be as small as it can be. And it's sometimes a little finicky to drag things around and size them. So I will drag it to be as small as it can be, and then I usually dock it down, not here, so it'll be a tab, but down at the bottom here. And that's just how I like to do things. And then you can open and close it with a keyboard shortcut. I think I've gone, I don't think there was one by default, but I defined a keyboard shortcut for the play panel. Well, F11, but I don't have an F11 on my keyboard. My keyboard goes to F10, so I defined a custom shortcut that's Control F10, and that will appear and disappear. Okay? So, question from Jeff about splitting the screen to work on two copies at once. And yes, this is possible. It's possible in MuseScore 3, and I'm going to show you how to do this. MuseScore 4 will work differently, and yeah, so it's getting to the point now where I want to also be giving you a heads up on what things are going to change. But let me show you how to do this. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that play panel again, but I'm also going to get rid of the inspector because it takes up some space that I don't want to take up right now. So F8 makes that go away, and now I can see my score. The reason the dynamics palette is open, by the way, is I always use a dynamic marking to help me size the inspector. This is a nice little trick, and I'm not forgetting the question here, but you notice the inspector here I've got a dynamic marking selected, and in the inspector you can see everything. If I make the inspector any smaller, you'll notice, oh, now there's a scroll bar here and you can't see those set as style buttons. So I always size the inspector to make sure there's no scroll bar when a dynamic is selected, because the dynamic, the different, depending on what you have selected, different settings are available. The settings available for dynamics are among the widest in the program. I think there's one or two markings that requires it to be a little bit wider, but if you can see the full inspector with a dynamic set with a dynamic selected, you can probably see the whole inspector all the time. So I usually size my inspector accordingly. All right, so now let me show you how to do the split screen thing. And I see, Denny, you're talking about the sound being intermittent, and I'm wondering if that's just your system, because I remember you were having some issues before. I want to know from other people if that's also the case. But as you know, Dennis and Colleen, you were here for the office hours yesterday. The internet was down in the whole building as the cable companies doing all this construction work around and relocating the cables, and so I had major internet outing, whole internet outage yesterday. But today things are normal. So as far as I know, things should be good for most people. So you could try logging out, back in, refreshing, whatever. But other people can let me know if you hear problems too. So anyhow, to see two scores side by side, I'm going to go to View, Documents Side by Side. When you do that, you now have side-by-side views. And there's this divider here that you can divide to you can drag to kind of control how wide it will be. By default, it should come out 50-50 the very first time you use it, but then if you resize your window and then the next time you use this facility, your window's a different size than it was before, it won't be 50-50 anymore. So sound is on and off, huh? All right, is it just my talking about that's true? Okay, so I get to deal with this, right? So let's find out. I'm going to try something. I'm going to try this, and y'all can tell me if this makes things any better. I'm trying to think of if there's some reason why it shouldn't, but these are some settings that I have that affect my sound. So anyhow, I guess we'll find out if this makes things any better or not. So this is the split screen view. And when you have the split screen view, you'll notice that it just both sides of the screen allow you to choose what you're seeing. I see Untitled, my default Untitled score, and MuseScore Café are both available on both sides. So if you want Café visible on both sides, then there you go. Now it's there. Okay, so I guess we'll find out if the voice gets better, and if not, let me just make sure my internet is actually the correct. It does say it's my correct internet connection. So yeah, there you go. So that is how you do the split screens thing. And then to turn it off, just come back to the view menu and turn it off. That's side by side. Similarly, you can use stacked, and now you have the same thing, but the views are stacked on top of each other. So what I did was I went to View, Documents Side by Side. View, Documents Side by Side, or Documents Stacked. It's just there in the View menu. So hopefully that answers the question. And also, I got to remember to turn on my little keyboard log thing. So depending on how big your monitor is, how wide it is, what else you have going on, you might find, and also the nature of your score, you might find the stacked view more useful, or you might find the side by side side-by-side view more useful. Now, MuseScore 4 is going to work differently. So I am going to show more about MuseScore 4 in the future when as it gets a little more stable. But what I will say about it is, instead of having tabs for separate scores like this, different scores will be in different windows. So you will switch between windows, which is really the way most programs work, right? If you think about like a word process, well, depending on what word processor you use, depending on what browser you use, you might have separate windows or you might have separate tabs within a window. MuseScore for MuseScore 4 is going to start having separate windows instead of separate tabs. And then you can size the windows and just place them next to each other very easily. So that's how that will work. And the reason it's going to use separate windows has everything to do with the new audio system and how it's going to support VST instruments, virtual sound tech. I don't know what it stands for. VST is a type of synthesizer technology, a software synthesizer technology that MuseScore 4 will support. And in order for that to work and being able to load different VSTs into different scores and things like that, it requires them to be in separate windows. That's the technical blah, blah, blah about it. So that's how it's going to be. So there you go. So I've showed you the document side by side. I've showed you the document stacked. Let me go back here and let's get some more questions in here. Okay, so Peter's asking now about specific instrument for vocal parts. So yeah, the question of what sounds to use for voices is it's a good question. I'm going to load up one of my scores where I use that's for a vocal ensemble. Isn't it in here? Oh no, I got to go up another level. Sorry. This one right here. This is a vocal ensemble score, and I haven't updated it for a very long time, but let's hear what I've got going. Oh, by the way, let me bring back the play panel for a moment. I need to double click. So I pressed Control F10. That's my shortcut for the play panel, but normally it's F11. And then you can double click the volume control here to reset it to the standard. What I usually do at the beginning of my cafe is I pull it down quieter so you can hear me talk over it. So there we go. So I am using strings. And in particular, let's go to the mixer, which, by the way, I could have used the mixer because it also has the same volume control. You may not have known this, but the volume control, the master gain here in the mixer, the volume control you see in the play panel, and the volume control you see in the synthesizer window, they're all the same thing. They're all different places to do the same thing. So I typically use strings, and if you look at the soprano, it's set to violin, alto is set to viola, tenor is also set to viola, and bass is set to cello. In principle, alto could be another violin, right? You might want to think, hey, this should be soprano, this should be SATB, string quartet should be a string quartet is usually two violins, a viola, and a cello. But the problem here is a violin doesn't really go low enough to cover an alto part. A violin can only get to the G below middle C. That's its lowest note. And alto is probably going to sing lower than that. So I just go ahead and use viola for alto. And realistically, alto does not go low enough for tenor. Viola doesn't usually go low enough for tenor, but in this particular score, it does. So kazoo, interesting choice. Kazoo. Let's just hear kazoo. I'm looking for the kazoo. Is there not a kazoo? Doesn't say there's a kazoo in here, so I don't know. Maybe you have to. Maybe that's the thing. You added that instrument. Maybe you changed instrument to kazoo rather than using the mixer. Because there doesn't seem to be an actual kazoo sound. So if you add a kazoo instrument, it probably does something different. Let me try that. I'm going to go to the instruments menu by pressing no, not the instruments window. I'm going to go to staff properties on the soprano part, change instrument, and try selecting kazoo as an instrument. And okay, yeah, that is definitely not a kazoo, right? So what did it actually pick for a sound? It picked solo vox, which is basically a synthesized voice sound. So there you go. I mean, kazoo is a vocal instrument, right? You play it with it's not really. Yeah, you play it with your throat, kind of. So in that sense, it really is. So this is what it really is using as a sound, solo vox. So anyhow, the strings I like to use for voices. I also find woodwinds work pretty well. And so I know like the people who do the let me undo all those changes now. The people who do the open score leader project that I showed some last week somewhere, I think in the music masterclass, I was talking about the leader, the art songs. When I was talking about accompaniment, they use oboe. And I guess for male voices, maybe they would use bassoon. And so that's a possibility also. But oboe doesn't go below middle C, right? You'd have to actually just use bassoon or, because even the soprano part might go below middle C occasionally. So that can be a little problematic. So clarinets or things could be a useful thing also. So Peter's comment also is clarinet, but yeah, clarinet definitely works. Is that the comment? So I think that's the comment in that we're talking about. So yeah, so clarinet can totally work. Clarinet has a nice range in that it goes down to written E below middle C, which is sounding D below middle C. So clarinets can work for both sopranos and altos. And then you would have to find another instrument to use for tenor and bass. In principle, bass clarinet might work. So let's actually try this. Let's go with clarinet. So I want to use the clarinet exper to make sure I get my single note dynamics working. You always got to use the exper sounds. If you start with an exper sound, stick with an exper sound. That's the rule of thumb here. So I'm setting clarinet exper, and there is not a bass clarinet sound, but if I just pick clarinet exper, I think it will actually go low enough to be useful. And if not, I can try like baritone saxophone. So here is what this sounds like with all clarinets. Yeah, that's pretty. Let's hear the bass. Yeah. So there you go. So strings and winds have the advantage of they can hold long notes just like the voice can, right? That's why I don't use piano. Piano, I mean, I like the sound of a piano, but it's not good for representing voice because then long notes start to die out, and that doesn't work for hearing vocal parts because then they won't balance correctly. Yeah, so the kazoo, as I did see that comment, and kazoo is in the vocal group because I guess technically speaking, it's not a woodwind. It's not a brass instrument. It's not a woodwind instrument. It's its own thing. It could be anywhere, really. I don't even know. But you basically sing into it, right? You control pitch just using your vocal cords. So in that sense, it's might as well be a vocal instrument. So I rather like the sound of this with the clarinet. That's kind of nice, actually. Yeah. So anyhow, I like the strings. I like the clarinets. But using any other combination of wind instruments. I find brass, I mean, although brass also can sustain, I don't typically like how brass represents the sound of the voice. It just doesn't seem, subjectively speaking, to be what I'm looking for. Okay, so some more questions here. Did I miss anything here, question-wise? Question-wise? Um, Membranophone. Yeah, so that's the technical term for what a kazoo is. It's a membranophone, but it's like there's like almost nothing else in that category, so there's probably not a whole separate category for it. And if Music XML doesn't Music XML is sort of a standard for how music notation can be represented in computer software, and it's got its own categorization system for instruments. And I'm not sure where I'm not sure where it classifies kazoo, but probably it's under vocals, and that's why we did it. So let's get some more questions in here. Let's get some more questions. Let me, while I'm looking at this score here, this is not one we've looked at before. This is one I created quite a long time ago. It said it was in 3.01. So some of the things that you can see that I've done here is, because it's a vocal score, I want my dynamics to be above the staff, right? So normally, if you add a dynamic marking to a score, it's below the staff. So what you then do is press X to flip it above, and then we open the inspector, and right here where it says placement, when I pressed X, notice it flipped it from below to above. Once it's above, you press the set as style, and now all your dynamics will be above for that score. So that's something useful I did. All right, how do you add lyrics to a comping arrangement? Okay, so this is a tricky thing, and so Peter's question is complicated. Michael's is simpler. So I'm going to answer Michael's question first. Michael's question about repeating the length of repeat bar lines. And basically, so this score here, the cafe score, has a repeat in it, right? So first of all, notice that it's got the wings turned on, and all the jazz templates do that automatically. For people who haven't seen that before, format, style, well, that's when you create your score, you pick a jazz template. But other than that, just by switching to a jazz style, like if I switch this to Leland, the default font, well, by doing that also, it changed the layout. Those wings stayed, but that's because that's a separate setting. But so if you're not already using a jazz template, you would switch to Muse Jazz, or Petaluma is the other jazz style. So let me go back to where I can see this. Let me get rid of the inspector for a moment. Actually, I want the inspector back. Sorry. Not that window, the inspector. Here we go. So to get the wings to appear, format, style, and then here under bar lines, you'll see the option to show the bar line tips, and those wings are what you want. Now, if you want the length of the repeats to be changed in addition to that, and I'm not exactly sure why you'd want that, but if you did, you can select that bar line, and then in the inspector, the span to and span from. So negative values and span from make it extend above. So there's extended there, and if I span to, expand to, staff to, now that bar line is taller. So there you go. Now for time signatures, you can use the inspector to change the scale of these. So if I scale the time signature to be, and you notice there's separate scaling for the X versus the Y. So you could keep them equally skinny, but make them taller, which is actually pretty common, or make them maybe a little bit wider, but a lot taller, like maybe this much wider, but that much taller, right? So there you go. And then there's a set as style button. So there you go. So that's and then so that set as style, if I hit that, presumably it will be part of the style. I've never actually tried that, but I'm pretty sure it works. So hopefully that answers those questions from Michael. And if not, feel free to follow up. So Peter's question is a little trickier to answer. Peter's question is about adding lyrics to a comping arrangement. And so by this, what I assume you mean is something like where all you really have in your arrangement are chord symbols, and maybe it's filled with slashes, and you go to Tools, come on, Tools, Fill with Slashes, and now you want to put lyrics underneath this. Or maybe you're doing the thing where you don't even put slashes there, but you actually make the staff lines invisible. So this is an interesting thing you might want to see also. I'm going to right-click Arrest and then say Select All Similar Elements, and then I'm going to untick Visible here in the inspector. I could have just pressed V to toggle them invisible, but if any of them were already invisible, that would have made them visible. So this makes sure they're all invisible. So now my rests are invisible. I can then right-click the staff, come to Staff Part Properties, and say Invisible Staff Lines. And now those are invisible. And now I can click my chord symbol, make it bigger, and also I can move it onto the staff by setting its offset to be 3. And now it's on the staff. And when I do that, I can then hit the Set as Style button to make that the style. Oh, and I want to do the same thing for the size of the chord symbols. And now my chord symbols are directly on the staff. So this is a common thing that people like to do to create a particular type of arrangement where you're not showing the notes, you're just showing the chord symbols and maybe lyrics, right? So this is like what the iReal Pro app does, for instance, shows chord symbols kind of within the staff in this way, and there's no staff lines. So then the question is how to add lyrics. And realistically, Peter's suggestion of a separate invisible staff is actually a quite good one. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to add a flute staff. Oops, I didn't actually double click it. Double click my flute staff. And on the flute staff, I can then, let me go ahead and move it below the piano staff. And I can now enter my notes. And you can add, whatever notes you want. It's not really going to matter what the notes are, but you just want to get the rhythms right. Right. So now I've got the the lyrics, the notes there, but now you need to make that staff invisible. The problem is I don't want to make everything invisible. I just want to make everything except the lyrics invisible. And like you said, it's work, but it's the sort of work you'd only have to do once, because then you could save this thing as a template, and most of this should come along for the ride. So I'm going to go to Staff Part Properties, make the staff lines invisible, not show the clef, not show the time signature, not show the bar lines. Under Advanced Style Properties, I cannot show the key signature, not show ledger lines. And now that's made almost everything I need to invisible. Now what I need to do is make the actual notes invisible. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select everything on that staff, select to the end of the score, and I'm going to use the selection filter. I'm going to go to View, Selection Filter, and use this to exclude lyrics from the selection. So lyrics are not selected now. Now I can come over to the inspector and say Set Invisible. And now everything except the lyrics are invisible, right? So this is a lot of things that I have to do. But again, you only really have to do most of it once. I think that step you'd have to do every time. So anyhow, this is, and then you wouldn't want to have to come in here and you'd need to make the staff. You could go into the staff part properties and say, hey, I only want one staff line. And hit apply to see what that looks like. That's looking better. You could also set this extra distance above staff to like a negative value, like -5, and so forth. You can just keep doing these things to try to do it. It is work. So realistically, I don't do that. First of all, I don't like this kind of score anyhow. I much rather see the notes because when I'm accompanying things, I like to see the melody. But if I were doing this, I would do something different. I would just use an invisible voice. So I would do the same. Well, actually, let me go back to the previous version. I would just come to this score that I had here and add those same notes in voice 2. And add my lyrics there. I'm going to go ahead and make the flute staff invisible now because I'm not really going to use it, but I don't want to get rid of it entirely. And now I can make just the notes invisible here by, again, using the selection filter to exclude lyrics and then set invisible. So realistically, that's how I do things. So I would enter the melody so that I get the right rhythm and MuseScore gets the spacing and can do all those things. And that ends up being a whole lot simpler. So that's realistically how I would do it. Just use notes in voice 2. Okay. What else? What else can I answer here? What else can I answer here? By the way, you can use rests instead of notes. You can use rests instead of notes, but because you can add, like, let me go to voice 2. I do see your question there, Graham, and I'll come to that in a second. I could enter rests instead of notes and attach the lyrics to those, but if I then press space, it won't automatically move to the next one. I'll have to do that kind of one at a time. So that's kind of not really ideal as far as I'm concerned. But anyhow, that's possible also, and people use it. So Graham's asking, can you leave chord names under the piano staff? I'm not sure why you'd want the chord names under the piano staff because normally it should be above or on. Underneath would be confusing to me. So I guess I'm not sure what you're asking here. But yeah, invisible notes and then add lyrics for sure. That's kind of what I did here. So hopefully that makes sense. So I used voice 2. Oh, by the way, why did I use voice 2? Did I need to add voice 2? Well, the reason I did it in voice 2 is I was still imagining I might want to put slashes or something else in voice 1, but that's not necessarily the case. So let me just try putting some notes directly in voice 1. 3, 4. My lyrics aren't very clever here, right? And again, by the way, when you use the selection filter, it remains set the way you set it. And so it's working in my favor here, but do remember normally to reset it when you're done by clicking all to make sure everything is selected. But anyhow, I want to exclude lyrics from my selection and then press set invisible, and that's fine. And now I can come here and enter my chords. Oh yeah, but now because that chord is there, I guess, yeah, oh, I made my chord invisible here. So the problem is here now, automatic placement is forcing this chord to avoid that invisible note and staff and stuff. So what I'm going to do is also, I can turn off automatic placement for that chord symbol, or what I can do is a fancy special thing here. This minimum distance setting here, I'm going to set it to a negative number, big old negative number, 999, and then set as style. That will allow the chord symbols to collide with things on the staff. That's kind of necessary. So there you go. So now the chord symbols are on the staff where they belong. So yeah, I'll wait for my comments to catch up to the chat and see if there's something else I can answer. Because again, Graham, I'm not totally sure what you're asking here, but if I've answered it, then great. Meanwhile, more questions. Let's get some more questions. What else can I answer? Let me think about the score that I was showing here, just to think about what else might have been interesting about this score. So I showed that I put the dynamic markings above the staff and how I did that. What else is interesting about this score? It's pretty straightforward other than that. Starting to flicker again? You mean the sound? Okay, well, voice is breaking up again. Yeah, I apologize. Apologize for that. And obviously, it sounded like it was not related to the thing that I did, the setting that I made. So I guess I could just go back and reset it, though, just in case somehow that does turn out to be related. Over here. Okay, so yeah, either it works or it doesn't, and I apologize. Okay, Graham, glad I answered it. So what else? I'm just looking at this vocal score here because I just want to see if there's other interesting things that I can talk about. And yeah, unfortunately, I'm not sure what I can do about what's going on with my voice. I guess. Yeah, there's no way that's connected to the actual microphone. I was gonna say I could plug in another microphone, but it's must be something with my internet connection. If it's happening for everyone, maybe the recording will be better. So if let me end my screen share for a second, and now you can tell me if that helped at all. If just killing my screen share helped. I don't know. So I'll talk for a bit and see again if there's questions. I'll take more questions and do my best. So yeah, just try your questions and we'll see what I can make happen. Let me okay, so Peter, I see in the chat, is asking that he sets system breaks for every 4 measures, and as he adds music and changes it, there might be 1 measure or 6. So for that, this is one of those ones where I would have to see your score to answer for real. But let me go ahead and screen share again and hope for the best, and just hope it works. Hope it doesn't cause problems. So the screen share might have caused some problems. That's good to know. But I can't do what I need to do without the screen share. So let's talk about this. I created a new score here. If I now go and create and go to Format, Add, Remove System Breaks, and I did add. So now there's lag. I'm hearing you say that. I'm hearing about the lag. And but my screen share is back, right? Should be back. So I add my breaks every 4 measures. The thing is that these are just breaks that like you could add manually. So this works as long as I'm just adding, I don't even know what I just pressed there. As long as I just add some quarter notes and things, I'm going to have just 4 measures. But if I then decide, hey, I need to insert a measure by pressing the insert key, well, now I got 5 measures on that line because it didn't change the breaks. So if you insert measures or if you delete measures, like if I press Control Delete to delete that measure, Control Delete to delete that measure. Now I got only 3, right? So if you add or remove measures, you're going to not have 4 measures per line anymore. Also, it's saying to put a break every 4 measures, but if it can't fit 4 measures, it can't fit 4 measures. So for instance, if I start adding 16th notes here, it can't fit 4 whole measures of 16th notes. Can't fit 16th. It cannot fit 4 measures of 16th notes here. So that is just physics, right? I mean, if the note is so wide and the page is so wide, that's as many of them as it can fit. So you're going to have to change something. So normally what you have to do is make your staff size smaller. You'll have to go to Format, Page Settings, and reduce the staff size. So instead of 1.75, make it 1.65 or whatever it takes to make it fit. You can kind of watch the preview to see if it's having the effect that you want it to have or not. So now the staff size is small enough. And yes, and sorry that there's a lag between the screen and the audio. That's unfortunate. I wonder if the toggling of the screen share on and off causes an issue with that. That's something I should test a little bit more. So in any case, we'll just keep going on and hope for the best, but we'll probably wrap things up sooner rather than later because A, I'm caught up on questions, and B, if things aren't cooperating, things aren't cooperating, and that is just life with live TV, as they say. So basically, Peter, you're not immune to the laws of physics here. If you want to fit 4 measures worth of stuff on a line, you got to make sure they're small enough to actually fit. And so it could mean reducing the staff size. It could mean reducing the font size of your lyrics if it's the lyrics causing the problem. It could mean going to Format, Style, Measure, and reducing the spacing here. 1 is tight, 1.2 is the default. Or it could mean reducing the minimum note distance. If I set this to 0, it will allow the notes to actually physically touch, which you would never want. But maybe 0.1 allows the gaps between notes to be smaller, and then you can maybe fit more notes on at the expense of readability. But those are some settings that you can fiddle with. So those are some thoughts. What else? What else can I answer here? I'm gonna keep going live here and hope that things basically work. And again, apologies for when they don't. Sounds good again. That's good to know. It's like random as far as I'm concerned because it's nothing I'm doing. So what else can I be answering? I'm looking at this vocal score again to see if there's anything else interesting about it. Notice, by the way, one of the things that I noticed that's interesting, that's just a bug that unfortunately is just the way it is. I'm looking, where was it where I saw possible issues? Oh yeah, right here. If you have these extender lines for a melisma, like here, right? So it's got just that what's called melisma while there's one syllable while the thing goes, and you've got you've got that one syllable extended there. You press underscore to enter that, but you will notice it's not smart about collision avoidance. It will gladly collide with notes. If that note had been lower still, it would totally collide with it, and that's just life. MuseScore's collision avoidance isn't quite smart enough to handle this. So you'll have to take this guy and physically move it down. So I'm just using, oh, by the way, when I used the arrow key, it moved it down to the next verse. That's not really what I want. I want to use the inspector. I forgot that lyrics are a little special. Usually the arrow keys will just move text, but for lyrics it actually moves it like to a different verse number. So I'm going to use the inspector to change its Y offset, and that moves it below. So you'll have to avoid collisions like that kind of manually. All right, let me undo all those changes. And I guess I'm undoing my instrumentation changes also. Okay, so Peter's following up about the 16th note. Yeah, so and that's exactly what is saying there, and I don't know if the mic was cutting in and out or not, but I'll try to just say again that yeah, those breaks are just breaks. They're not magic. They're not like, it's not a special setting that says have 4 measures on a line. It's just adding breaks every 4 measures. It's doing nothing different than just going to the palette and adding those breaks manually. It's just a quicker way of doing it. But it's just like line breaks in a word processor. You can put line breaks in a word processor to only put 3 words on a line, right? But you can't use line breaks to get 173 words on a line. It's just not going to work, right? You can use line breaks to get fewer words on a line, but you can't use line breaks to get more. You need bigger paper or smaller words. that's all there is to it. If you want 173 words on a line, you need bigger paper or smaller words. And the same is true. If you want 4 measures on a line, you need bigger paper or smaller measures. And that's, just physics. So, yeah, when you add the breaks, they're there, but they don't break the laws of physics. They don't cause measures to fit that don't. Nor do they change your settings for you. They don't force you to have. They don't force the staff size smaller. They don't force the spacing smaller. Those are just settings that you control yourself. Again, if I scroll through my score here looking for anything else that I see that's interesting, worthy of mention, here's something I'm noticing that's bothering me a little bit. This crescendo here is not in the same font as everything else. And I think it's because it's an older version of MuseScore that didn't have these crescendo lines. Actually, I'm not really sure, to be honest. That's just a dynamic, I guess. I see that this is set to, the abbreviation for crescendo, and according to the inspector, it's set to Muse Jazz Text, but this doesn't look like Muse Jazz Text, does it? So I think if I double-click this puppy, I'm going to find, oh, look at this. It's set to some other crazy font here. I don't know how that happened. This is from an older version of MuseScore and got imported, and it was probably using a font that I don't have installed on my system anymore. So what I need to do is I need to reset these style adjustments. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this reset here. And that obviously did the trick, right? So now I'm going to right-click this thing and say select. Sometimes that's a little temperamental. Right-click, select all similar elements. And I'm going to go ahead and change the font, change it back, and reset. That's by changing it, because some of them were set correctly, some of them weren't. So I changed it away to make sure they're all set the same way, and then I hit that reset button. Now all of them are correct. So sometimes when you import a score from a system that was using a different font that's not available anymore, you might need to do something like that to sort of update it, to reset it to the default font. So that's kind of what I did there. So now I'm happier with that, and in fact I should probably save this at this point because yeah, here's some more collisions that MuseScore did not avoid automatically. So inserting dynamics puts it below all the notes in that staff. Yes, by default, but again, I then use so let me show again where I did that. Well, let me do it on a new staff here. By default, when I added that MP, it's below, but then I pressed X, and that flips it above. And then I press Set as Style to make all the dynamics be above. So that's how you get the dynamics to be above all the staffs, which is what you want in a vocal arrangement. If there's piano accompaniment, well, then you'll have to flip it back below for the piano staff specifically, if there's piano accompaniment mixed with your vocal staves. Um, yeah, one of the other things I know is, like, when I originally did this, I had probably planned out where my page breaks were, so I didn't have things like this where two systems fit on this page and only one on this page. But what happens is, right, this was a much older version of MuseScore, and obviously things have changed since then, and I don't know, to be honest. Yeah, I don't remember if I had it set with two systems per page everywhere, or if I had, squeezed three somewhere, or if I'd done other things. So I'll have to kind of revisit things. So, Peter, okay, good. You've got a nice link here to a score, and score chord symbols run into lyrics. So where should I be looking here? Actually, let me download the thing. Oh, yeah, so here I see exactly what you mean. Right here. So this is that exact same thing of literally this melisma line here doesn't participate in collision avoidance. It gets drawn after the collision avoidance happens. It's just an unfortunate fact of life. That the way the collision avoidance works, it works at a particular stage of the layout, and melisma lines get drawn after that for various reasons, and they therefore get excluded. And they can't be drawn earlier because then it causes some other problem, and it's like a chicken and egg thing going on. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that, for the melisma line thing, but there's something else going on other than just melisma lines that I want to address here. And this is a kind of a subjective thing, but I'm pretty sure I know what you mean here, and it's probably not what you want, and it's potentially an issue even aside from the melisma line. So I'm looking for an example where it happens, and I don't actually see one here, but I can make one happen very easily because I think I know exactly what you might mean. So feel free to tell me in the chat if there's a particular place I should be looking for this. But what I see is, now I can't find that spot where I was looking before. Where's that spot? Oh yeah, right here. So what if there hadn't been a melisma line there? It's still the case that there's not a collision here, but it's distracting, right? It's distracting. So what I would say is, what this tells me is that the staff distance here isn't enough, because these lyrics, these lyrics are pretty low, because there's a low note here. But realistically, I think what I would just do is I would probably move the chord symbol. I would just add additional space above the piano staff is what I would start with. So I would right click the piano staff, staff part properties, and where it says extra distance above staff, I would just add a couple staff spaces worth additional space. And I got to go far enough that it actually kicks in. Hello. Oh, that setting doesn't take effect because of a different thing. That setting, that extra distance above staff, doesn't take effect because in format style page, vertical justification is on, and this is adjusting these distances. I'm going to be better off disabling it for this score. It's not usually recommended. Now, it made this worse, right? Now the A7 is really colliding with that. But now I can at least come in here and say, go to staff part properties, and I can start increasing that extra distance above staff. And I think, no? Oh, it's not working simply because I never pressed OK. So that's how you do it. So that's what I was forgetting there. So what do you have? What on earth did you have? Is there another invisible staff here? It was a acoustic bass staff. Is it overlapping something? I'm confused. What am I not seeing here? I guess it's just hidden when empty. Let me make sure I can see the chat again here. So yeah, that's actually an interesting thing here. Let me undo all my changes again, and just come back to staff part properties again, and set that extra distance above staff, and this time hit apply. Because now I can't remember. Maybe I don't actually need to disable justification. Yeah, this setting actually does work. So I just need to set a big enough extra distance above staff to kind of make sure that chord symbols clear lyrics, because that problem is going to exist pretty much everywhere. And the places where you don't need the space because there was already space being added, it won't be there. So this is probably something I would do. I would play with that extra distance above staff, or I would use spacers as necessary. Because yes, unfortunately, it's again, the melisma lines don't participate in collision avoidance, and even with the melisma line not there, you might have cases where the chord symbol kind of slots between lyrics and doesn't look good. So you'll just have to manually add space, is my answer for you there. So once again, I think I'm caught up. So one more chance to get some questions. Base is only the first page. Gotcha. And then it was empty staves hidden. So like that thing that I did with the extra distance above that piano staff, that ends up being not very appropriate here, right? So I could then use a spacer. I could use a fixed spacer to remove that space here, right? I can come to breaks and spacers, add a fixed spacer here, and then drag it up to reduce the space there at the beginning. Or I could add spacers to add space just where I need. It sort of depends on how common that problem is. So yes, you could also, let me undo all my changes again now. The other thing, if it's just one or two places, yeah, you could just drag that chord symbol down there, and then this chord symbol down too, right? Drag it down, or use the inspector. I don't usually drag, but I'm just trying to be simple and direct here. So that is a possibility also, just to kind of pull things and manually adjust them around. So that's absolutely a possibility. But if it's a whole score full of that kind of thing, often the chord symbols look best when they're aligned, and maybe it wouldn't have been practical to drag them lower because maybe there were notes above the staff, right? So I'm trying to talk to different ways of approaching it. So the extra distance above staff is one way, spacers are a way, but also just manually adjusting things is a way also. There's always ways, and then you get to pick and choose. But yeah, the idea that chord symbols might slot in between lyrics, that's true. And it not just chord symbols, it could be a note. It could be a note on a ledger line slotting in between two lyrics, and that just happens. And that's just that is sometimes a good thing, because if those lyrics were a long distance apart, then it's fine to have that chord symbol slot in there. But if the lyrics are close together, it looks really weird, right, for that to happen. And so we don't have any way of making a judgment call of, like, if these lyrics hadn't been there, right? Let's pretend none of those lyrics were there. Did you see what I did, by the way? I clicked the word time, and then I shift-clicked the word and it selected just those lyrics. So now I've deleted all the lyrics in between there, and now suddenly it doesn't seem so bad to have that D minor slotting in between those lyrics, because there was nothing going on in here, especially if all the notes were gone too, right? We know that D minor doesn't apply here, right? So this kind of thing wouldn't seem so problematic if we were dealing with lyrics that are far apart, because the person would have already skipped over, the singer would have skipped over this measure anyhow, right? So that's what I mean about it there being sort of a judgment call here. All right. I'm caught up on questions as far as I know, and I've been going for the hour. And I don't usually like to go longer than that. In fact, I like to go shorter than that, and I might try to try to force that to force myself to go shorter in the future. But I feel like I've answered a lot of questions and got a lot of things done here today. So let me play out some music and. Thank everyone for being here, and as always, it's a lot of fun doing these Ask Me Anythings because it's I get to think about things that I didn't know I was going to be thinking about, and I get to answer things that I know are useful for you specifically. So that's always great. I'm always open to more suggestions for more topics to cover in future cafe episodes. So keep those coming. Send me suggestions in the community and so forth. Thanks everyone for being here in the community, for participating. Love to have your participation. And you're going to be hearing more from me about new things that I've got wrapped up. Thanks for participating in that poll where I was asking what kinds of things you want to learn more about. If you haven't already, go ahead and fill that out. But I've got a lot of answers. Got well over 100 at this point. I didn't even check this morning. So tomorrow's music masterclass, we'll be looking at some music, talking about the poll, talking about what kinds of things I can be helping with in the future. So just stay tuned, stick with me. I got lots and lots and lots more stuff I want to just keep showing you. So as long as you want to keep learning about music, I'm here for you. So thanks again, everyone, and see you next time. And I now remember I need to just chill and sit here for a moment, wait for the chat to catch up. Otherwise, it cuts me off mid-sentence. So, see you later, everyone.